Okay, great. All right, welcome everyone to week one, session one of DES 242 logo design. Today we're going to do kind of a walkthrough of the whole class, and so I call it a class welcome and overview, as you can see here. And we'll take a little break and we'll just go through the overview continued. And the way that I usually like to do classes, the way that the format kind of happens or unfolds is I'll typically on day one, which is Tuesday, let's go ahead and go into the announcements. So in the announcements, this is a good place to kind of stop by regularly and just check out what's new, especially in the beginning of the week, because I have to post at least 3 new announcements. Usually that's not a problem when I have 3, but sometimes I have to come up with something, which isn't too hard. But that's part of the request, is that we have 3 announcements at the beginning of every week. And so check out the announcements early in the week, every week. Make a plan of doing that, and that way you can really be up to date with the class and anything that might be going on in the school. As you know, Thanksgiving is coming up here, and we just have 1 session that week. But more on that when that comes along. So it should be kind of a quick mod with Thanksgiving. I'm sure all of you have plans for that. Helps when you only have 1 day of class, but you can get in here on the announcements. That right now the posts I just have are the welcome, and let me go through that really quick. If you need to get a hold of me, everything starts here with an email. And if we need to troubleshoot more, we can do Zoom, we can do phone conversation. But really, this is where, if you have an issue, some way that you need to get a hold of me, start it with an email. That way we can document it easier. This is the one to contact me at, or you can just respond to the welcome email that I sent on Monday. So whatever works for you. But if you do have an issue, feel free to send me an email, and we'll take it from there and see what we need to do. The other thing that I want to mention now in the announcements is, for more help with the class, we have Christy Paulson as the dedicated learning coach. And here's her current schedule. This changes weekly, so you might want to check that every week. Right now it's Wednesday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., Friday, 6 to 9 p.m. And she's really good. She's helpful with kind of those details that you might need help with. Contact me more with overview type of things. But if you need like really troubleshooting details or things of that nature that you might need help with something specific in a program, Christy's really good for that. She'll get on and help you out, usually with Zoom, or I'm not sure if she's still using the older version of Zoom it wasn't called Zoom, it was called something else, but it's a screen share software that she can get on and kind of work with you that way. So make sure that if you are having any difficulty, you can contact me about it, but a lot of times Christy is the one to contact with a lot of those details on the assignments and assessments, and discussions too, if you like. But here's her schedule. That once again changes weekly, so a good thing to check early in the week. Let's go through the schedule. So as you know, I'll just go over this. Tuesday, you're in the right place. Tuesday, 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock are the live classes, and Wednesday, 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock are the other live class. And I like to post these. Usually I try to get them up by 5. Sometimes they're up by 6 at the latest, depending on how long the classes go. Classes are supposed to go for at least an hour and 45 minutes. Sometimes they're a little over 2 hours, but I try not to make them that long. I try to wrap up before the 2-hour mark. But sometimes it gets a little bit difficult to do that. So it's something that I try to do. These are standards that the school sets. They want classes to be 2 classes, 2 hours long, or hour and 45 minutes at least. So that's pretty much what I strive for, and I've been known to go longer than that. Believe it or not, it's easy for me to go longer than that, but I try not to. I try to wrap it up and kind of get to the point. So hopefully you'll find it, even if it does go long, you'll find it educational. Get something out of those extra hours or extra minutes that add up to hours. But in all honesty, I will try to wrap it up before 4 o'clock. So anyway, check out the announcements regularly, especially at the beginning of the week. I'll go over my bio really quick here. You can access it from the front page. I like to say, there I am, there's my schedule, my phone number, my contact information again. Again, I prefer the email first. You can always call me. But usually when we start any kind of issue, it's through email. And anyway, let me talk about this. I'd like to break down 3 main skill sets that I think are really important. People skills, and that's good communication, reliability, showing up on time, all of that sort of stuff. Getting your work done on time, all of those ways that you can practice in class, those people skills. It's great to do. I think if anything, I tended to avoid this as a graphic designer more than anything. I liked focusing on design more than anything else. Technical was kind of second, but people was the hardest thing to do. And I think that it's probably the most important thing to do. I've really made a point of telling students that, because I think that that might be one area that they're lacking, because you can have a college degree and that's going to get you through some doors, but really those contacts with people are of more value than anything else. Those connections that you can make with people is what's really going to determine your success more than anything, especially once you get a certain degree of the design skills mastered and the technical skills down. You kind of understand the basics of, when you send a PDF file or a JPEG file, or what kind of PDF to send and what print labs are looking for. I mean, that's number 2, technical skills. Working effectively with print and web requirements, software organization, all that stuff would be technical skills. And then design skills, that's pretty obvious. You've probably come across that acronym, CRAP, C-R-A-P, contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. Everybody's teaching that. All the other teachers, most of them, kind of adhere to those 4 basic design principles. And I think they're good ones because they're really important. You can use those in every project you work on. Contrast, repetition, alignment, proximity, easy to remember. I would recommend for any of the assignments or assessments that you're working on in this class, you always do kind of an assessment of, how's the contrast on this? How's the repetition? Can I improve that? Can I do more of that or less of that? How is the alignment? Does everything look in alignment? Does everything align up that's supposed to be related to one another? So it's not just kind of the technical alignment, but it's also how do these things that I'm working with in the design tie together? And that definitely goes strongly with logo design. So all of those 4, last one, contrast, repetition, alignment, proximity being the last one. It's kind of similar to alignment in a way, but it's just, you can also think of proximity as how you group things. So that's kind of a quick review of CRAP, CRAP, easy one to remember. Excuse the acronym, but like I say, that's an easy way to remember those things. They're not necessarily glamorous, but you don't need, it's a good tool. Tools don't need to be glamorous. It's just something that you can use to remember when you're working on your projects, that CRAP acronym. And always ask, can I add more or less? Can I group these elements so they make a little bit more sense? And always put yourself in the point of view of that end user, and how is it going to come across to them, as well as how it comes across to you. So if it comes across well to you, there's kind of an assumption that it's going to come across well to the end user, but that may not be the case. And kind of when I'm the instructor, I kind of put myself in the position of the client and what the client might say as far as well, I don't understand this, and what did you mean by this? And um, I also take the position of an instructor, and I'll just tell you. I'll just say a lot of times, well, you need to consider this, or you need to work with, consider working a little bit more with proximity, for example, or alignment, or repetition, or contrast, or those are kind of the four main ones. But as you probably know, there are many, many more. I mean, I have there's another book that Ellen Lepton co-wrote. Let's see, what is that one? It's Graphic Design, The New Basics. I wrote it with another author, Phillips. I think it's Nicole Phillips that wrote this. And they list, I think, at least 16 different design principles. So, and that's not all there is. So I think if you look at that acronym of CRAP and using design elements and principles effectively, and the ability to make effective updates to your work, etc. And I should probably actually add that acronym in here because I talk about it so much, and I plan to do that. But I think you can get a little carried away if you look at too many at once, and that's why it's good to focus on just those four, because most instructors, most designers will agree that they'll use those four in just about every project that they work on. And most tend to agree that those are the four most important. And we've got that acronym that's easy to remember. So, if you feel like venturing outside of those four, by all means do it. If you're kind of bored with just those four. But I recommend, if you're new to it, or even maybe semi-new to it, sticking with those four basic ones and just looking at logos and kind of saying, well, how do you, for one thing, existing logos use those four principles, break it down. That's a good way you can kind of look at what's out there. And then when you're doing your own work, bring those four principles into it. And like I say, ask how you can improve those by adding more contrast or less, more repetition or less, more alignment or less, more proximity or less. So if you can kind of look at your design as you're moving through it in terms of that, I think you will find that you will be improving quite fast. So we always like that. So those are the three areas that I recommend focusing on, and being really honest with yourself about, maybe what area you need to be improving with. Like I say, I really like design skills, and I like being creative. I like doing artistic stuff. I kind of like the technical skills too, to a degree, but not so much. People skills, those are a little bit more difficult for me, quite honestly. But one of the ways that I kind of got my start as a designer is by doing trade work with friends and family and just acquaintances, and made up my own business cards, and just did that for a couple years, just doing trade work before one of the people that I'd worked with in the past came back to me and offered me a job, because he had moved up in his company to the point that he was a creative director, and he liked the way that we worked together on these projects that I didn't charge him money. I just did for trade work. And so that was how I was first hired back in the year 2000, as I mentioned. So that once I got that first job as a graphic designer, it was just kind of an entry-level position. Lasted for a couple of years. And once I had that under my belt, I could get more jobs more easily. I went right into creative director and art director at another place. I kind of was able to embrace technology at that time quite a bit. And I remember at the time when I was hired on for an art director position, I didn't find myself that well qualified for it, because I just had one other, aside from my couple of years of freelance that I mentioned, or I call that freelance, and working for trade and maybe for, hourly here and there. I did some of that, and then I had this other job for a couple of years. It was a corporate job. But once that was established that I had that job, and once I showed that I was actually creative director was my second graphic design job, which is kind of amazing. But I tended to embrace the internet at that time, and a lot of people weren't. And in my first interview, I remember there was only one other person. They'd interviewed over 50 people for this position, and there was only one other person that had a website. So I kind of lucked out there, but I was embracing those newer technologies to promote myself. And that was another way that, they were impressed by that at the time. So it just kind of, you got to get your foot in the door. People skills for me was just working with a lot of people in terms of not trying to get money out of it too much. I mean, I would work for money on occasion, trading my time by billing quotes and things like that. But most of my initial freelance work when I was, working in the late 90s, and I wasn't hired on yet, was working with friends, family, acquaintances, even just people that I'd meet and I could give business cards to, sending out promotions in the mail. Although anything that I spent money on, that seemed to be kind of it didn't really pan out to come back to me. It was like I spent more money on the personal advertising than I did, with the exception of business cards. I spent more money on advertising than came back. So that wasn't always great, but it's those connections that you can build with people and how you work with people on your projects that will come back to you, that will over time, that will come back to you. And you never know if you choose people who you think might, move up in their company, or maybe they're doing projects on the side. If you want to find something that you can do to trade for them. Sometimes they would prefer to pay money, but sometimes they have something that you would want. I don't know what that might be, but look for those ways to meet people, get out there, show your skills, work with others, work well with them, show good communication, show that you're reliable. You can get those projects done on time. You can do what you say. And I think that you'll find that you'll have good luck with that. That is how I kind of worked my way into the business. And that's a question that I get on occasion. How did you really get your start? And I think that having a degree will open some doors, but I think those contacts with people are really what, open the most doors for me. So think in terms of on this level, a lot of people get caught up, like I say, in these two, and that was me. But really try to start working with people. I recommend, even as a student, or even early on, trying to get those contacts built. Make sure that you're fairly comfortable with your technical skills, design skills. You can do those design contests, which I don't know if you've ever heard. Has everybody ever heard of 99 Designs? That website, 99designs.com. Do you do that one? Have you ever done that, Richard? No. So I don't want to say those sites can be a little bit exploitive in terms of designers, but if you're new to it and you want to get practice, I think they're a pretty good idea. What they are is you set up an account and you end up competing with other designers for your, to make the best logo. And so that 99 Designs is essentially a website where you compete with other designers to make logos. And I've tried it. I think it's okay. It's not for me because I'm a professional graphic designer. I have a background, and for me, it's a ripoff, personally. But if I was to start and I needed some incentive to kind of get out there and improve my skills, that's a good place to do it. I think I'd recommend it for students who want to do it and have some fun with it. There's all kinds of debate you'll find about whether or not 99 Designs is this horrible website taking advantage of people. And it depends on how you look at it. I think it all depends on that. If you're doing it to improve your design skills and even people skills to a degree, but mostly design skills. It's not a bad idea to kind of try it if you want to give it a shot. But it can definitely be one thing that can boost your skills a little bit, maybe put you out there. On the flip side, the communication with clients is very limited. You can type in questions, and this is 99 Designs. There's another one. There's a few others out there, but 99 Designs is the one that I tried out. So you can do that, but the communication and the contact with the client is very limited. It's just like a matter of typing in a little question about what do you want about this logo, and then they answer it in a few days. And it's really not the sort of communication that you want with real clients in real life. And I think real clients in real life, and if you're working for somebody, you need to be in a lot more close contact with them. So in my opinion, take it for what it is. I think it can be good, but it can also be bad depending on how you look at it. But if you're interested in getting some logo design experience and maybe competing with other designers, if who knows, maybe your logo that you do will get chosen by the client, and that's the only way they get paid, believe it or not. So anybody else who you'll see maybe over 50 designs that that they've done, that other designers have done. There'll be maybe, I don't know, a dozen other designers sometimes working on the project. You'll see theirs, and they'll upload theirs, and then the owner of the project will rate them. So you can go through that whole process, and if that interests you, that can be a way to kind of build your skills. Some of you may be at that point. Some of you may not be interested in that. But, it's another thing to try if you're interested. So something to consider anyhow. All right, well, there's kind of a rough overall background on me and, what my opinion is of the breaking into the industry and things that can help you to kind of improve some of these things. Like I say, I think for people skills, I think you need to be pretty proficient in your design and technical skills before you have the confidence to really approach people. So that's the problem here. I think if you're in this area here and wanting to improve these two, then a site like 99designs.com can work pretty well for you, because it'll kind of force you to get out there and test out your skills and try them against some other designers. And I think that it can, if that interests you, go for it. If it doesn't, then don't. It's all your opinion and what you want to do. But once you have these skills down, make sure that you start trying to develop relationships and contacts with people. And 99 Designs is not a very good site for that. You don't really develop good contacts. It's a very impersonal thing. And you need, like in real life client work, you're doing a lot of communication, a lot of sketches, talking to people on the phone or on the computer a lot nowadays. Screen share software and things like that are very common to show drafts and progress on your logos. So that's a little bit more the communication style that you want, so that you really can talk to these people, have meetings with them in person, and 99 Designs does not provide that. So this is, once you get your design skills and technical skills down, you're confident with that, start getting out there, trying to start thinking of friends, family, acquaintances, coworkers, anybody that you think of that mentions starting a business. Talk about, sell yourself as a designer, work for trade. You can work for free, but I always advocate, trading something, and that way you feel kind of more value in providing a service with them. And I think they'll have a tendency to value you more as well. So that trade work can really come into play when you're trying to start out. So it did for me. That's how it happened for me. So let's move on from that. Let's go ahead and talk about this week. I'm going to just review the whole class at this point. We'll just go through what is coming up. Discussion 1, logo and identity impact. This week, let's look at how logos and corporate identities impact us. First, perform a Google search on logo design, and find and post 3 logos that stand out to you in particular, and write 3 sentences for each logo, identifying why you chose it and what particular element stands out to you. And although, like I say, it doesn't say analyze this in terms of the CRAP principle, I highly recommend when you're doing the discussion post, talk about how those core principles that we talk about work with this design. So I really like this logo, Weisinger Music. I don't know how you pronounce that, but the W on the piano keys and the M with the piano keys, pretty cool. So if we look at this in terms of contrast, what do we see? Black on white. You see a lot of contrast. We look at this, we see white on blue, but this could easily just be black. Look at this one, again, black on white. Now, you'll see that a lot with logos because contrast is king, as they say a lot of times, but it's also what makes you really notice something that really stands out. You want your logo to be able to read really well in one single color. That's a general rule. And all of these, as you notice, do. They work in one single color on a background. So that's good. And you'll see sometimes these embellished logos have gradients and drop shadows and all kinds of textures and things like that. And that's fine. I think it's a little bit more advanced for a beginning logo class. And I would recommend staying away from too many effects and just kind of try to simplify it as much as you can. Think of it in terms of how can I keep it simple? How can I make it as simple as possible? Okay, question, does it mean write 3 sentences for each logo or write 1 sentence for each logo? So, I'm not going to count words or anything, but she's got 3 sentences here. That's about right. So 3 sentences on each one. But, if you wanted to approach it, like I say, C-R-A-P and say, let's say, you wanted to say, this is a high contrast logo. There is no middle ground in this. There's no gradient, no drop shadow, no texture. It's just black on white. So there's our contrast. What's repeated? What's repetition in this? We've got a symmetrical. So really when you flip that, you draw a line in the middle and you flip it on each side, the left side is repeated on the right. So that repetition is symmetrical. We also see repeating shapes like the circles. These kind of mustache / scissor blades that are going on. Kind of a cool little logo. It's creative. We get the point. It reads really well. What about alignment? Straight across again. We've got center alignment with the text. Always be considering. That's the first place where I think of alignment in most cases, is how is your text aligned? This is centered. This is centered. This doesn't have any text. We just call that a logo mark. Well, you can break this down, and this would just be like an image logo. So letter mark, word mark, and what's the third one? We've got now it's escaping me. So we've got the logo design workbook that we're working with in this class, and they break it down to those 3. So I have it in my grasp. Now I've forgotten, but it's just like so this would just be your image. So I'm calling it a logo mark, but I think they call it something different in the book. And sometimes I'm forgetting the term right now for some reason, but I'm sure it'll come back to me. Terms are interchangeable. It's not an image mark, but it's just the mark. Oh, good point, Corley. It incorporates the letter CFO. Good. Right. So that would be, exactly, that would be a monogram. So it's a little bit confusing, some of these terms. I wish I had my book right now in reach. I'd break it down a little bit easier. Maybe I'll make a note of that and do it, come back to it tomorrow. I didn't plan to get too far into the discussion on the specifics, but I ought to know that, at least how they describe them in the book. Monogram is just your initials, so that would be here, just WM, if we just saw that, and sometimes we might. That would be your monogram. This would be a monogram, but it's also a symbol. All right, there it is. A symbol logo is what they call this. But you're right, it's an integration of the monogram, the CFO, so it's a symbol logo integrated with the monogram, the initials in this case. So it's a combo. This is also a combo. If we just saw Wissinger Music piano service and we didn't see this up here, then that would be a word mark. Letter mark, some people call it some people call monograms letter marks. So they're, like I say, I'll stick to the book and how they break these terms down. I'll plan to from now on, but sometimes you hear those words kind of thrown around in public. People will just use different terms. So know that terms are interchangeable in this case, and you might hear them called other things, but there's really essentially just three different types: the symbol, the monogram, and the word mark. That's what the book does. Now I remember. But if we didn't see this WM here, and this is also an integrated symbol with the piano keys, but it's also the W and the M. So it's also so this here's a really good example because it's all three types of logos. This one here, I'm not seeing any of the initials worked into it, but it's still a good logo. You don't have to work in all of these things, but it's kind of neat when they can do that and do it well, like this one. So anyhow, those are some good examples, and she's got 3 sentences. She's not talking about the design principles here, but you don't have to. That's not part of the requirement. It's a good idea too, I think. And I think it helps you out because when you're looking for those 4 design elements in other people's work that are successful, it's easier to look for them in your own work and kind of break down, like I said, go through kind of a checklist. What were we on? So we were on alignment here. How is our alignment? I'm talking about, I like to start with alignment with text, but I also mean, the piano keys here, for example, they're aligned. The W and the M, they've got a bass line, and they're aligned, across the top and bottom horizontally. They're also aligned, we've got this center. So this is put in the center. I think it would make sense to have text directly under the center of this, but you wouldn't have to. You could also have it
Hello?
to the side. Hello. Hello. Can you hear me? Did I go out again? Hello? Volume has gone out. Okay. I'm not sure what's happened there. You can't hear me right now? Okay, good. All right. Little audio glitches. Okay. So, looks like we've already got a pretty good start here. A lot of logo examples that people have already posted in the forum. That's good. It's filling out. Be sure to share those logos. Get them in here so we can see them. That's preferably the way to do it. I think if worse came to worse, I would accept links like this, and that would be okay. Okay, guys, please remember to mute your audio when you come into the class. It tends to be really loud and disturbing when you enter the class, or if you enter, just remember I've got a setting that is supposed to mute all audio when you enter, and sometimes it doesn't, but it makes for some kind of clunky recordings for any of those students watching the recordings. So just remember to do that. Mute your audio when you come in, and all will be good. So anyway, here you can provide just links, but it's really a lot nicer and easier in the discussion if you can provide the actual logos like these guys are doing. So all of these are good. You know, these are the right amount of content, 3 sentences for each one, at least. You know, you can do more than that if you like, but at least 3. And we've got on discussions, as you know, I'll just repeat, you need a total of 3 posts. You need your main post here that answers all these questions, and then 2 other follow-up posts to other students to get the full credit. And, you know, obviously, word count, we're looking at about 250 words for your main post. You know, that's roughly about right. Something in there even is enough. But here, it just breaks it down to 3 sentences for each one, and that should be easy enough to get that word count. And I'm not counting words, but, you know, sometimes it's obvious when someone's only written a sentence or, you know, hasn't written anything in some cases. I mean, he looks like he posted, James Holly here posted these, and maybe he's going to put some text in there where he's talking about it later, and that's fine. I don't mind if you want to take this in stride and kind of do one thing one day and then embellish it later, and, you know, finish it up and write sentences about, you know, what do you think works about the FedEx logo in terms of, you know, what kind of a logo mark is it? Do you like the colors? Do you like you go back to contrast, repetition, alignment, proximity? How does it work with those design principles? So all that's good. If you wanted to, you know, I'll expect him to write that in there later at some point in time. If he doesn't write it now, that's fine. It doesn't get graded until usually Sunday. So you can keep that in mind. Try to make your first post by Wednesday. And, you know, that way you'll keep on track, but you also get credit for making a post on Wednesday. So, or by the end of the day on Wednesday. So those are some methods to help keep people up with the class, because as you know, the class tends to move quite fast. And, you know, those are little kind of methods for, I think, helping students to keep up to date with the class. And it's worth 5 points, and sometimes I grade on it and sometimes I don't. You know, if I don't grade on it, you don't get deducted. But, you know, try to make that first post by Wednesday. And that should help keep you on track, as well as, you know, just keep the course on track, and just, you know, ensure that you're going to get the 100% and not deducted for the, you know, 5 points for not posting by Wednesday at midnight. So, any questions on the discussion? I guess I didn't talk about, I was talking about the CRAP principles on all these and how we might organize these principles. I didn't talk about proximity. So if you notice the white space under here, we could talk about how close is that symbol to the words underneath, to the name, Mr. Cut's Barber Shop. Could we put this a little farther away? Maybe. I think it's got a good amount of space, though. We sing our music. You know, a lot of these are approximate, or they're in proximity to one another. Here, even if you follow this loop around, it kind of follows this guy up and the character on the bike. So we've got a symbol of a guy on a bike mixed with CFO, which is the or not acronym, but just initials for the company. It's kind of a clever logo. It's kind of neat. Integrated those letters with the guy riding a bike. Now, could there be more space in here, so less proximate to this? Maybe. The proximity I might look at in terms of here I might be like, well, maybe we could give this more space to the Risinger music, and that would offer a little bit more breathing room. And that white space, they call it, even though it's black, is just space between here. Or could it even go closer in proximity to this? Because the way it is now, it's kind of like the cymbal has more white space than here, where we have Risinger music piano service, more proximate, more grouped together. So it's almost like there's a nice vertical rhythm if you follow it down, but sometimes you can look at these and say, well, maybe this could have more breathing room up here, and you could move it up a little more. And that would give a little bit more of a feeling of expansion. And maybe that would be more appropriate, but then again, maybe not. Those are kind of designer decisions that you make a lot intuitively based on how it feels. Does it feel right for this logo? But that's another thing. Always considering that white space and what's between those elements are at least, if not more important than the elements themselves. And I know that's a hard thing for beginning design students to grasp, but thinking about that white space is always critical. And in this case, we're looking at proximity, might be the distance between these two groupings here. This, if you kind of squint at it, you can see that this almost disappears. So let's look at this one. Let's look at this one up here instead. So if you squint, you can see that these are proximal. So, well, I can't outline it, but so these are proximal Mr. Cuts and Barbershop, and then we got some space between these, the symbol element up here. So those spatial relationships are really important. Keep those in mind. Keep it in mind that we don't want it touching this, but we might even consider having some more space and giving those different elements some breathing room, making some proximal to others while others are kind of on their own. They stand out on their own. Or whether or not you group the whole thing. If this is moved farther apart, do we still easily group the whole thing visually? Again, those are decisions that the designer has to decide based on feeling. Usually, most often. Some people like to use actually ratios, aspect ratios and things like that, but I won't get into that. I think you can start more intuitively what kind of works for you. And I think that ratios can be a way to go if you're having a hard time with it intuitively. So anyways, we'll talk about some of those methods some more as we progress throughout the class. Let's go ahead and move on from the discussion. I want to at least talk about this week's work before we take a break, which is on schedule for, looks like in 10 more minutes, we'll go on break. So assignment 1, logo quality improvement. Research and find 2 quality logos, read their case studies, user book, or links below. This is Logo Orange, this website, and designem.ag, another website talking about logos, talking about case studies, some good resources here, or you can use your book. Choose 2 logos you feel do a poor job of contributing to a positive company image. Please limit your logo choices to those that can be shared in class. So always consider that, because unless you tell me, I'm just going to assume that everybody that submits the project this weekend is open to having it criticized in the sessions. And I'll usually do that on Tuesday session. So next Tuesday, everything from, well, that's would be everything from week 1, I'll do a review on in the class. And then I'll usually, on Wednesday session, I'll do an example of how I would put the assignment or assessment together on my own. And so I do kind of a walkthrough example and talk through it and just do a demonstration that way. But Tuesdays are usually this Tuesday, today, it's a walkthrough of the whole class, but usually what Tuesday's session is a kind of a critique and review of the previous week. So that's what we'll do. Always make sure that you can share your content in class. It's not too racy, it's not too out of alignment with what the school standards are and what they're looking for. Just use your best judgment and, stay on the side of good taste, I guess, is what I would recommend for that. But if for any reason that you don't want your project to be shared in class, I have absolutely no problem with that. I'm happy to not critique your project. Send me an email, and you can avoid that for whatever week. But I think a lot of people get a lot of learning out of those critiques, and a lot of people want that. And I try to do, anybody that shows up, I try to do a critique for those that show up for class, and then I'll choose a number of projects that tended to show a representation of what a lot of students had a problem with. And you can also send me an email, and you can say, please share mine in class. I'd like to see mine shared. I have students tell me they want theirs shared, and I'll try to share theirs every time. So do it by the week. Tell me that, this week, can you share my project? And maybe you can say, talk specifically on this concept. Show me how contrast and repetition could work better in this. If you have a question like that, you can do that, or just leave it open. Just say, please go over my project in class this week, and I can do that. So know that you can do that. That's a good thing. A lot of people like to have their projects critiqued, but some people don't, and that's just fine. If you're not in a place for that, then don't worry about it. You don't have to necessarily show it. Up to you, again. But the assumption is that I'll show everyone's unless you let me know that you don't want yours shown. So anyways, back to this. So you're choosing 2 logos that you feel do a poor job of contributing to the company image, and then you're going to redesign those. We're going to be using Illustrator a lot for this class, almost exclusively Illustrator. You're going to redesign these 2 logos, create 3 rough thumbnail sketches. I'm a big fan of sketching out your work. Take some sort of just a photo with your phone, or some people just use their laptop camera. Show some of your sketches, because that is probably the best way in almost all cases to actually sketch it out first with a pencil on paper. And these days people prefer digital programs a lot. I know people that work on their iPad, and if you want to do it that way, that's okay. The whole point, though, is you have some way of sketching out your ideas and getting them down fast. And that might be drawing stick figures and making something really rough just to get the concept down. But, in this case, you're going to want to rough out a few thumbnail sketches. And those can be anywhere from 3 inches by 3 inches, really small. They could be 1 inch by 1 inch, really small. Literally almost the size of your thumbnail. That's kind of what it is. You're just working through, it's probably not quite that small as a thumbnail, but that's just what they call it when it's just this tiny image. Like I like to look at it as like maybe a 3 by 3 sketch, 3 inch by 3 inch, or maybe a 1 inch by 1 inch sketch, whatever you feel comfortable with, whatever you think represents what you're trying to do. You can sketch it out first, and then that helps you to develop it once you get into Illustrator. All too often, I'll see this in every class. Everybody just wants to jump into Illustrator. And then a lot of times they'll go backwards and say, well, I know we had to do sketches for this, and so I'm just going to do them and fumble through them because it's a requirement. But I would avoid doing that. I see it every class. A lot of people do it, but try sketching, even if you don't consider yourself to be good at drawing. And that's another one that I get often is people say, oh, I'm not good at drawing things. I can't sketch, and they look awful. And if you want, I won't share that part of your that part with the class if you're that self-conscious. But really, we're not looking for embellished final sketches. You don't have to be a master sketch person, a master artist in terms of how you sketch or draw. You're just working out concepts. And like I say, think stick figures, think really fast. You're looking at least 3 of these. But this is my recommendation for how you want to start every logo, is to do some kind of a quick sketch. People call them napkin sketches. People call them thumbnail sketches. They're just really quick little sketches to get the idea down. So think about that. You're going to have to actually show them. Make sure you do them first and then go into Illustrator, because Illustrator is a lot more, it can be a creative tool, creative program, but I think that you're going to have more luck if you do more of the creative stuff. Offline, sketching, for example, maybe you like the iPads, and some of those apps, a lot of people do. I prefer the old-fashioned way, sketching in a notebook and then bringing in your logo to Illustrator, because Illustrator tends to be a little bit more of a technical finishing program rather than a kind of a brainstorming creative program. It kind of feels like a creative program, which is good, but not nearly as much as writing or drawing, sketching your ideas and getting those down on paper. I think you'll find it's much easier. You have much more success if you start with sketches and sketching out those ideas. You'll also have a lot of ideas. Think in terms of, on the logos, do at least a dozen of these. It says create 3, but I'd recommend doing at least a dozen of each of those. Probably more than 20 if you really want to get the hang of it. But I really just need to see 3. I'd rather you not hand in 20. That's another thing. As a designer, you want to be selective. So do 20 of them. Do at least a dozen for you, not for me. I don't want to see them. But choose your 3 from the dozen. And what you'll see from that process is the 3 best ones really floating up to the top. And that's what you want. You want to get your best work, and that's what you want to show and share with clients, or with the class in this case. But it usually takes a quantity of drawings and ideas to narrow down the best ones. In my experience, most of the time it is that way. Occasionally you'll get one right out of the gates and it works, but it seems to come far less often. It takes a lot. It's a process. And if you can think more than 20 thumbnails to get your best 3, that's the way to look at it. If you really want to learn and develop here from this. So all I need to see is 3, choose the best one, create at least a dozen, 20 or more if you feel inspired, and even more than that if you feel inspired. So question is, are we putting the sketches on the paper into the Microsoft Word document? So you won't be handing in a Microsoft, you won't be handing it in 100%. It's, I'll go over this tomorrow. I think I'll present it how I would present it. I mean, I know it's calling for it's a paper and kind of a research thing that we're doing here, but the way that you're going to hand this in, I suppose, this has changed. So since the last time I saw this assignment, they want you now to put it all into one PDF file. So the client's not going to tell you that, but you have the assignments here that will tell you that. This would be this is what they're saying in the assignment is the proper way to package this. As if I was the client, I'll play the role of the client as well as the teacher in this class. Give you feedback that way, but this is how it's asking to be presented, and that's a very common way of using the PDF file. I think you can write this in MS Word, but I'd recommend just integrating it all into the one. So it actually does, using Acrobat, combine the 2 PDF files into one. So I'll go through that tomorrow, how to combine those all into one document. A lot of times that's the desired result to send to the client so that you don't have multiple documents getting scattered and lost. It keeps it into one package. And it works a little bit better for us, student to teacher at the college as well. So one single document, one single upload to the Dropbox, it tends to be a little bit cleaner and a little bit more desirable. So that's what they're asking for in this particular case. But yeah, number 4 on this one is to write a 250 word minimum. That's about 1 page. Again, I'm not counting words, but if you only write a really short paragraph, you're obviously going to get some points taken off if, it's really short. So I'm looking for around a page. If it's not a whole page, then that's fine. I'm not going to be a word counter on this, but make sure that you research it. Make sure you get that spelling and grammar corrected, and make sure you get the structure of the writing to the best of your ability, and we'll take it from there. But roughly looking for a page, and that's about what I'd be after for the full point project. Okay, a couple other questions here. Can you go over how to incorporate the 2 PDF into one file? Yeah, I'll do that tomorrow. So how to combine this all into one. If there's time today, maybe I can do it. I want to go through the whole class, so we'll see if I can wrap this up by 4. Maybe I'll do it today, but I'll guarantee to show you, as I do on every Wednesday, I'll walk through the whole project. Usually it's both the assignment and the assessment, but sometimes it's just one or the other. So I'll show you how to package it, submit it, do everything in that sense. And really one easy way, you could take the MS Word and just cut paste it and put it into Illustrator. Make an artboard and put it that way, and then export the whole thing. That'd be one way. Or you could create an InDesign document and bring them all together that way. Or you could use Acrobat. And that's the recommended way. I suppose I'll do that way tomorrow. You could certainly do any of those other ways that I mentioned. Make it a little more presentable in InDesign. So that's, again, up to you, how you want to do it, even though it recommends this way. I think if you can improve upon some of these directions, you can do that as well. Like I think doing an InDesign presentation where you really did a nice layout, that might be a good way to present this and get practice as far as your InDesign work. So that's always good. But yeah, that's all we require here is Acrobat. It's really simple. You just, I guess I could show it actually I believe it's up here. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but you go combine files into a single PDF. It's that one. So File, main menu, File, Create, combine files into a single PDF. And once you go into here, I can show you the screen. So you can add files like that. You can either drag them into here, or you can go and search your desktop that way. So you can do it, just combine all those files together that way if you want. But that's kind of a rough one. Like I say, I'll go through this when I put the whole project together tomorrow. So any questions? I forget if I asked any questions on the discussion or the assignment. Okay, I want to get to at least cover all the week 1 work before we go on a break. And it's about time for a break right now. So we'll do that 10-minute break. This is your quiz. So this is like depending on, doing your reading. So I won't go into this. This is kind of a surprise to, you know what, let's look at it. I'm going to preview it. I'm not going to say the answers, but In your own words, what is a logo? It's a time test. Just think of a paragraph in here. That's fine. 2, 3 sentences, even one sentence if you think it's appropriate. 1 sentence, 1 to 3 sentences for each of these answers is totally fine. So in your own words, that means you're just not copying, from the book. You're interpreting and writing it yourself, explaining the advantages and disadvantages of wordmark logos. This is all stuff that is in the reading, and if you're keeping up with the reading, these should be pretty easy for you to answer. Explaining the advantages and disadvantages of symbol logos, same monogram logos, and they don't ask about lettermark logos, but oh yeah, here we go, wordmark logos. I get confused sometimes. Lettermark is what I was calling this, but in the book they call it wordmark. So there's just these 5, and then just like a multiple choice. Which of the following is not one of the 10 rules for successful logo design? So it's a time test. Here are the questions. If you wanted to pause the video and look at what you're up against, if you're one of those people who doesn't do well under time tests, I think you've got, do they time it at like an hour or something like that? I believe maybe this isn't timed. Maybe you can have it. No, they do. It's 58. So yeah, you have an hour to complete this. And if you're one of those people that runs out of time, I know students tell me that all the time. But now you have the questions. You can just pause this video and look at the questions, look at your book, and you can go back and forth. So if you have a problem taking tests, if you feel like that hour isn't enough, it really should be, but it will be for most of you, but it may not for some. I mean, I went through a phase where I was really slow at taking tests and looking at things. So, I mean, some people are in that phase, but if that might be a issue, then, well, now at least you know exactly what to look for when you click that button and the timer goes on. So you got an hour to take it. Pretty straightforward questions, all from the reading. Logo design workbook. It's Sean Adams, and I forget what the other one's name is, Morioka, from Adams and Morioka ad agency based in LA, who wrote the book. Sean Adams, as I understand it, does classes on lynda.com and also was, I'm not sure if he still is, president of the AIGA. So, definitely some good writing, some good information in that logo design workbook. I think it's one of the better texts that I think we have at the school, and I'm glad to see that they're holding on to that one and not swapping that out, because it's a really good book. I think you'll like that one a lot. And I think that all of these are really straightforward. All of these questions you'll find pretty easily in that book. So anyways, I guess now it is time to take a break. I'll scroll through here so you can see the questions and answers again. Give those people who need a little bit more time, Which of the following is not one of the 10 rules? So all of this is on one page, as I recall. And then you can look at it and figure out. I'd like to see everybody pass at 100%. It could happen. You never know, but it could happen. So that is that. Let's, if there are no other questions, let's go ahead and take a break, and we'll come back with the rest of, kind of briefly just skim through this, talk about what's to come in week 2, week 3, week 4, and just go over some of that stuff. But this will be really fast and really basic. It won't even, I don't plan to even go into it as much as I did with the week 1 work, but we can see. And like I say, tomorrow I'll do a demonstration of, I won't do the assessment. I can't really demonstrate the quiz. I don't want to do that, but I'll do a demonstration of the assignment tomorrow. So that's the plan. Let's do a 10-minute break, and we'll see you in 10. Probably. I'm not done yet. Hello, welcome back. Everybody ready to pick this up again? Let me make sure we're sharing the screen. No, I won't go into quiz 2. So what we're going to do for the rest of the class is just go through kind of what's coming up. Discussion 2, kit of parts. Assignment 2, logo design. I won't go through this today, but next week I'll plan to show it so some of those who are slower at taking tests can see the questions like we did this week. I'll plan to do that again. Then we'll talk about these. Again, I won't talk about the quizzes today, but we'll talk about these two. And mainly this one. We'll talk about week 4, career integration. That was added last year. I don't know if they're going to continue doing that, but we'll talk about that briefly. That's just where you rate the class and give kind of a breakdown of your opinion. Maybe we'll talk about that, maybe not, but I'll focus on the main work. So looking at discussion 2, kit of parts. Kit of parts is interesting. So this talks about a breakdown 68 through 69 and through page 77 for examples. A kit of parts is just kind of like it's hard to explain, like a metaphor for it, but it's just like, maybe you could look at it like a toolkit or toolbox that you create from a brand identity, and in your toolbox for that brand identity, you have your color scheme, your main color scheme, and then any other sub color schemes that might be under that. You would do the same with typography. You would do the same with any kind of graphic elements, so symbols and how those are used. And you would pull from those. Usually, I guess if you look at it totally literally, a lot of times it's just at a server, and it's if you're working on a team, like you'll have different people on the team. And this is kind of how I was confused about it at first, but you'll have different people kind of working on different aspects, and then you'll end up pitching them and things will get approved, and designers can take from that branding kit, the kit of parts, in any project. So you'll use a shared server if you're working in a corporate environment, and you'll be able to access the company logo. You'll be able to get those colors that you need. You'll be able to get the typefaces that they use or the fonts that they use. And examples of how it's used. You'll get the branding guide. All that stuff could be thought of as a kit of parts. But in our case, we're kind of creating a kit of parts. We're kind of creating these logos on our own. So it's a little bit on a smaller scale than you might run across in a corporate environment where you've got a team working on this stuff, or maybe an advertising environment or whatever you're working in. But here we're creating just kind of a toolkit for that brand that would involve those things, and we're going to do it all on our own. So here the discussion is, talk about what the kit of parts is, how it's used, discuss the various questions that need to be addressed when designing a new logo and possible variations. Lastly, please list some more essential aspects of a core identity design program. Refer to your textbook specifically on these pages. So again, that textbook you'll find invaluable. I think it's, like I say, one of the better ones. I really like it, Logo Design Workbook. So I think you'll enjoy that one, just reading it. It's one of those that you might just want to have on your shelf just to have it, because it's that good, I think. It's a great reference. So that's coming up next week. Um, I didn't mention also, I should have mentioned APA references are required on all, at least at least one APA reference needs to be um, on your main post, unless otherwise indicated that's not. So, in this one, I'll decide next week. I'm not really sure if I'm going to even require it for here because unless you need help getting, get some practice on APA, it's not like I need to see APA reference on the same book. But certainly, since it's asking you to take it straight from the book, I almost want to dismiss the normal requirement for the APA reference on discussion 2, but I'll plan to do that at this point, but I can't commit to it 100% at this point, since we don't need all the same reference on everything. So that might be an exception to the normal rule where you need to have the APA references on your main discussion post. All right, so here is assignment 2, logo design. For this week's assignment, you'll choose from one of the 2 industries, create a logo as well as show your design process. You can choose one of these companies, Block Financial or Stella's Foundation. And this could be pretty fun. You're just going to choose one of them. You're going to, in addition to the final logo, you'll be required to submit, not only the final logo, but 2 computer-executed variations of your final logo. And what I recommend for that is really even push the concept on this so that they're not just you change one from red to brown or something like that. Switched up the colors a little bit. And maybe the colors in the typeface. Well, that's not the worst thing. I don't think you're going to get as much out of it if you really approach it and do 3 completely different concepts. And a lot of times when you present your work initially to a client, you'll want to create 3, and that's a typical number. You might have different agreements on how many you present, but 3 is kind of common. And what you want with those first 3 logos, for example, let's say we're talking about logos as in this case, would be variety. So by that, I mean, a lot of times, even as far as a different concept for each logo that you do. So you're not just changing colors or typefaces or the arrangement, but you're really changing it up. You're changing the symbol. You might even change, like I say, the concept. If it's, let's say it's landscape. Well, we can use one of these, Stella's Foundation. So maybe for her, this is the company is just a brief write-up. It's just a nonprofit company dedicated to promoting literacy amongst inner city elementary aged children. So this one, I'm thinking maybe children like bright primary colors. It's kind of an obvious one. So maybe I'll use a primary, just something that appeals to kids like balloons and primary colors or something. And maybe I'll have just that with the word mark for one version. And let's say for another version, I want to do something that shows the books because we're talking literacy and we're talking community book clubs and giveaways of new books. So maybe I want one that incorporates a book somehow. So the symbol with a word mark for Stella's. That might be another approach, but if we need 3 of them, 3 total. We got one that we're going to say, this is my favorite one. This is my chosen one, but here's some different ones. I mean, I'm right. You can do variations, but I just don't think that you get as much out of the project. It's not as realistic either in real life. You're going to make those initial presentation. You want to get the client on a certain direction. Usually that's part of the first presentation, at least in my experience. For me, I like to try to get them moving in single direction. So do we like the balloons logo that I was talking about? Or do we like the book logo that we was talking about? Or maybe we even do a third one that's just a monogram, SF, and then Stella's Foundation underneath it. So we've got 3 totally different takes on our initial logo in that presentation. That's what I'm looking at. That's what I'm recommending. But really, the way this is written, you could also just do some really basic changes. So it depends. You're not going to get 100% on something like that. I like to see that effort, that you're really putting a lot of energy into it, and you're gaining a lot from these assignments. And that's what's going to earn the 100% grade. If you just do some good variations, and maybe you've changed the typeface, and maybe you've changed the arrangement, or something small like the color or something like that, why that would get, if you did a good job on everything else, you could get an A on this. But really, if you want to get 100%, I would recommend the approach of really putting some variety in those initial 3 logos. So they're all different concepts, these 3. So anyway, 10 thumbnail sketches. So you're going to thumbnail sketch out everything, which I always recommend anyway. A word list of 10 different words describing your company, and 5 different visual inspiration images. So let's say I just wanted a book. Maybe it's like, I've seen this concept done. In fact, I think I've done this concept myself. The spines of books as buildings in a city. So we're kind of combining the aspect of literacy in the inner city. So spines of books are also buildings, and they double as that. And that's a concept I've seen students do. That's kind of neat. But what do you take that inspiration from? Let's see some books, and let's see some buildings, and so that's all that means. If I was going to do something like that. So these different steps will be explained in detail in the live lectures, so be sure to attend the recording. In all cases, on Wednesday, I always try to do a really detailed walkthrough on Wednesdays of how I would put the assignments together. And when I do those, I would, I'll show you my solution, but I never like to recommend copying exactly what I do. I think if you need to, you can, but I think you're not going to, again, learn as much by just copying what I do. Like when I do this tomorrow, or not when I do this next week. I'll do assignment 1 tomorrow, but you want to come up with your own solutions, and that's really a big part of it, is that creativity. I have students sometimes copy exactly what I do, and that's definitely not what I'm looking for. So they're not going to, people who copy, while you can pass the class that way, you're not going to get as good a grade if I see that kind of creative thinking going on, and trying to solve your own visual problems that come up, and work with those visual issues that come your way. So that's what you were thinking. You were thinking about the spines, and that's a good idea. I like that. That's one idea. So you could think of a couple more, maybe with an open book, or books flying away. Like I've seen that one that was kind of neat, with a bird flying as the spine of the books as its wings. And people come up with some interesting ones for Stella's Foundation. And if you choose to do block financial, you can get a little creative, but it's a little bit less creative. Depends on what you're after. You're going to have to do, if you're working for clients, you'll have to do all kinds of different logos and different projects. And you can get fairly creative with a financial corporation, but it's a lot more conservative, as you can see. So you've got kind of these opposite extremes. This is a little bit more fun. It appeals to children, bright colors, maybe some a little bit more organic shapes and forms, and you can have a little bit more fun with Stella's. But block financial, you tend to want to be more conservative. You don't want to put your money into a bank that looks like they're having a good time. Because that's not the image that we're trying to convey through their logo. We want something a little more conservative, a little bit more like the navy, dark blues, dark colors. Not always blue, but look at like Chase logo, Chase Bank, and some of those you can look to for inspiration on this. But this, for example, would be a lot more. No Comic Sans. Probably shouldn't use Comic Sans for any logo, but definitely not for a bank. You wouldn't want to invest in a bank that used that font. Certainly not. Probably wouldn't have much faith in any company that used Comic Sans for their typeface, unless it was for some sort of joke, because there's always an exception to the rule. But anyway, so this is a fun one. Clown school. There you go. Clown college. So yeah, these are fun to do. I really like doing the Stella's Foundation because it's fun, but maybe I'll do this one this week. We'll see, or next week. But you actually start to create your own logos in week 2. Week 1, we do mostly research and maybe some adjusting of existing logos, but it's mostly researching week 1 to kind of get your feet wet, and then we're actually going to be creating our own logos this week number 2. And let's move on to week number 3, because we'll also be creating logos in week number 3. Discussion. Please take 8.5 by 11 sheets and fill them with 6 thumbnail sketches each. So you're going to take 3. One sheet could contain monogram logos, another symbols, and another word marks. There you go. They break it down just as the book does. Monograms, symbols, word marks. Sometimes you'll hear the word logo mark, and that could apply to all of these. So there are terms out there that are interchangeable, being thrown around. This isn't the only resource for the different types of logos, but it's a good one. I like that it's simplified into 3. And know that you can always combine those. All those logos we were looking at earlier in the discussion. It was Sarah that posted those. They were all combinations of these different types. So you can either have one and it just uses that one type, or you can combine. So either way, you're going to do 6 thumbnail sketches on 3 different sheets of paper. Take photos. Usually outside in the shade is best, or indoors where you got window light, where the light's not too strong. Get a good exposure so you can see those images that you've sketched. So you'll attach those and upload them to the forum. And then you'll just offer feedback to others, talk about likes and dislikes, what you think works on each of their logos, fellow students' logos. Even recommend which ones you like best and how you would develop them. You can kind of play the client in this case. So for that week 3 discussion, you can kind of pretend that your fellow students have designed these logos for you, and you can give them feedback. And constructive criticism. Always try to present a negative with the positive. It's good to kind of start with positive and end with positive, but it's also good to have that negative, or not negative, but that criticism, because that is also important. The yin and the yang, I guess you could look at it, or the opposing opposites, the positive, the negative. Make sure that you got both of them. All right, see you. I guess she took off. Coralie took off. All right. How would you upload those sketches to the discussion? I don't know if they have done any work to this, if they fixed it. But let's say sometimes they have that attachment. You can attach a PDF. The main way that I would recommend is, do you have a Dropbox account or some sort of cloud account, Apple Cloud? You have one? Okay, that's a good one. So what you would do is just provide a URL to a Dropbox account, or there's all kinds of them. You can get free, if you don't want Dropbox, you can get many different ones. Apple has cloud storage that you can link to. It just has to be a URL. Microsoft does. I think Google does. I always use Dropbox. That's always served me pretty well. Haven't really had a reason to look into any of those others, but maybe you want to look into some of those other options. That's the way I'd recommend doing it. On a flip side, I think you could also use the paperclip if we still have that there. I don't see that here now, though. So that would be the best way, but we can talk about that some more as that comes up. Yeah, you could also use Canvas for the school. That's another one. I don't think that one's well. I wouldn't recommend it because really, you can set up a Dropbox account now, and you can use that as a professional. You can use it outside of the school. So that's one good thing about that. Otherwise, you're kind of stuck with, I guess they use Canvas to upload to, and that'd be fine, but a little bit more limited in terms of how you can use it outside of the school. Okay, so assignment 3, logo design, word mark, symbol, and monogram. Utilize your thumbnails from the discussion to finalize a logo. Do 3 variations on your logo. One should be a word mark, another symbol, another monogram. So that's good. We're breaking it down. We're offering variety. And that's typically in your initial presentations. You want to offer some really good variety. And then as you work through it, progress throughout the process, you tend to hone it down a little bit more and come up with one specific direction that you move in and one final logo out of that. So please make sure the logo can be used in a variety of applications, whether it be on a small business card or billboard or online. Use your thumbnails that had a consensus of being more successful. And again, you also combine that with the logo that you like. You don't have to take classmates' feedback 100%, but you definitely want to consider it. So you can combine certain elements from more than one thumbnail to achieve your result. Obviously, you can combine those as we were talking about earlier. We won't go through all of these directions now. We can easily do that later as we're in assignment 3. So let's go talk about our final. I might talk about career integration. I think that's old for most of you. Like I say, that's just, I don't think I'm going to go over that unless, Richard, you're the only one in class. I can go over that if you want, but it's really just a breakdown of the class. And I'm just looking for a sentence or two that describes, why you thought the way you thought, why you did it. It's worth 15 points. It's worth doing. And I guess it's 50 words is what you want to write about. I guess I'll go over it. We've got plenty of time, so I'll just plan to do that next. Let me open it right now. Forget. Just touch on that briefly, end with that. For the final assessment 4, we're going to do a comprehensive identity campaign. And it's, kind of a miniature version of an identity campaign for like maybe a really small client that's just starting a business that isn't, a single mom and pop type operation. It's not, planning on taking over the world with their corporation. They're just kind of a small outfit. So that would be an example of what this might be used for. It's just, you're going to talk about your colors, your fonts, typefaces, however you want to look at that. I guess I'll mention the difference. Fonts are software and I'll sometimes use those interchangeably when I talk about it. Fonts are the actual software, and typefaces are the typeface. So that's your actual lettering. So if I say typeface, that's actually the correct way to refer to it here. But sometimes I will just slip and say font, and it's all good. But anyhow, I tend to use those interchangeably. But colors, fonts, typefaces, whatever. Layouts, you want to do a business card, you want to do an example of how that would look on an envelope, Facebook thumbnail and cover, Twitter thumbnail. So you're given examples of how your identity, your logo and your colors, maybe a tagline. Some of you will want to use a tagline. But based on your project 3 from the previous week, you're going to finalize it based on my feedback that you'll get from the week 3. And you'll finalize it, put it into here, and put it into one package and submit it as a zip folder. So, this is a pretty good final. You're combining assignments from previous weeks and putting them all together into one final package. 185 points. So obviously this is the most points out of any of the projects. Normally the assignments and assessments, well, assignments are normally worth 120 points. Assessments are usually 50, but the week 2 one is worth 80 points. So this one is the most points at 185, so most comprehensive. So just make sure you tackle all these different aspects. You'll finalize your logo, and then you'll do some opposing versions for example, horizontal and vertical. That's another one. You can also do reverse versions. So one might be white on black, and the other is black on white. So that would be another opposing version. So they give you this example to do one that's vertical and one that's horizontal. That's a really common alternative when you create logos. But so is the reverse and the regular. That's another really common one. So there's some liberty that you can take on this. If you wanted to present both, that's not a bad idea too. Highly recommended. More work's probably better when you're learning. Try to think about, well, how would that work on a reverse treatment? So anyways, that's the basic final. Update and revise your assignment 2 logo according to feedback you received. And then, it's not week 3, it's week 2. So it's either Block Financial or Stella's Corporation, or wasn't Corporation, was it? What was it? It's week 2. Stella's Foundation. That's right. Foundation is a nonprofit, so there's a difference there. Anyway, any questions on this one? Again, or any other work that we've covered. We're just going to do one more here. We'll go over this really quick. Career integration. Stop me if you have any questions on this previous work. I like to give everybody a general overview of the class and let everybody kind of see what's expected. And just kind of, you can kick back and just kind of watch this video and not really end up, designing anything. A lot of times you might be designing as you're watching. But this one, you can just kind of have an overview and see what's to come. I'd also encourage, if you have time, to maybe look at some of those things and, plan your month out, the whole mod, based on what's to come. I think it's not a whole lot going on in the final. I think it's fairly straightforward, simple final for the assessment 4. But keep in mind, that's the most important thing to have turned in, worth the most points. And also fairly easy if you've been keeping up with the work. You can still get a good grade on something like this and maybe not have a Facebook thumbnail and cover image. Maybe you left that out, but you could still get a decent grade on it and still get a lot of points. And a lot of people in week 3 will kind of struggle with that. and end up turning in like a assignment from week 3 when it's like, well, you could have turned in the final and got a lot more points on it rather than week 3 that was late. So it could come down to passing the class versus failing if you don't work on if you don't turn in a final and you're kind of on that threshold of pass fail. Definitely consider the final to be the most necessary, and obviously it's the most points, and it's really kind of the easiest to do. So a lot of the times I'll come across that where students will have a choice between the week 3 work or the final, and they end up doing the week 3 work and not completing the final, and they end up failing the class by just, a few points. And that sucks. That's terrible. We don't want that. So keep that in mind. Be smart about it. Look at those point scales and those if you're ever finding yourself in that situation. And keep in mind that final is really important and easier to score 120 points on versus a late, for example, assignment. Let's say assignment 3. If it's late, if it's really late, usually beyond Wednesday, it's going to take the full deduction, which is 20%. So if you got everything right, everything perfect, you get a 96 points on that. Whereas this, you could probably skip Facebook thumbnail and do everything right but that and get a pretty decent grade, let's say a B+. But you skip that. B+, and that would be, my math's not great, but it's somewhere like in 150 points. So you'd probably spend the same amount of time on this that you would on working on week 3 or week 3 project, for example. And you get through the class that way. So I'm just pointing out there's a way to work smarter, not harder. So if you're at that point, and the only reason why I bring it up is because in every single class I've ever taught, I have several students at that point. And hopefully you're not one of them, but if you end up in that position, just think your point breakdown and keep that in mind, because I want everybody in this class to pass. That is a goal of mine, but obviously it takes work and dedication, and you're gonna have to work for it. I can't just pass everybody. It rarely happens. Occasionally it does. I really like that when it happens, but realistically it doesn't often. So last, career integration. What did you find most value from the readings? You can include videos as well in this course, and why. What did you find most value from the instructor lectures in the course, and why? Remember that, and why. Expect 50 words or so on each of your answers for full credit. And what did you find most value? Find out most value from the assignments in the course, and why. So 15 points. It's worth doing. Each of these is worth 5 points. It lists different things. It gives you some examples. If you don't kind of develop this and just say, broad examples, I learned how to prepare better for my future career, you won't get very many points on that versus, giving us some examples that are a little bit more helpful, because, you don't want to say this. You'll get 0 if it says something like that. The assignment sucked and I didn't learn anything. So be realistic. If that's what you thought, then I want to hear that that's what you thought, but how might you say that? I like some of the assignments, but I didn't like the assignment in week 3 because I didn't like doing all that sketching and the photo, and taking the photo was maybe difficult to do. Or, that's even in itself is not the best example of a critique, but if you've given me that information, it's more helpful to me and to any other instructor that's putting these together to really get something out of, what is it that we could improve? Is it difficult to get those images from the camera onto the computer and then upload them? And do we have a lot of students complaining about that? Can we make that process easier? We look at this for things like that. So if you can provide those reasons, even if they seem a little silly, feel free to do that. But tell us what you really thought. just be professional about it. This is obviously an example of something that's not very professional. We're looking again for those positives and the negatives. Think of both of those. Keep it balanced, and that would be best. So I guess that's all I have for today. And if you don't have any other questions, Richard will just make it a wrap for today. Like I say, tomorrow I'll be presenting the project, the assignment 1. So we'll be going over this step by step, and I'll show you how I will present this tomorrow. And that's that's not the one I wanted. This one here. So I'll go through this tomorrow in detail. And then if you have any questions, discussion, or anything about future assignments, assessments, and whatnot, be sure to send them my way. I can even talk about that in class tomorrow. So that is it for today. Thank you for watching, and we will see you tomorrow, same time, same place. Oh, you emailed? Okay. I'll check that out. All right, thanks. We'll see you tomorrow.